Well, hello, sports fans. This is Larry Eater in San Jose and Stuart Wire in Oxford, England. And this is Athletics Chat 11, your weekly hour of us putting together some type of normalcy in your world. Well, hello, Stuart. How are you?
Well, I've never been called normal before, so that's the first, Larry.
Well, I'll try Abby normal. You know, we'll make some salute to Mel Brooks today because, you know, gotta love a little Mel Brooks once in a while. Young Frankenstein or you know, Blazing Saddles, you know, all the good stuff.
Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, I'm reconciled that I'm not really going to travel to anything this year. Not that there's really much around here to travel to.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I'm reminded this week that I should be at the Olympics.
And I see your Togo shirt on.
Yeah.
Why don't you share with our dear viewers your relationship with the country, the nation of Togo?
Well, in my other life, I run a Christian-based sports development charity. We have a project in Togo. I went there 7 years in a row, and that just before the 2012 London Olympics, the Olympic Committee asked me if I would be their Olympic attaché in London, which sort of basically means liaising, doing odd jobs, and getting the best accreditation going. And to my utter amazement, they asked me to do it again in Rio. So there I am. I was working with the Togo Olympic team. Now, it's a big team, Larry. It's a big team. I mean, there were 6 athletes in London and 5 in Rio.
Nice. Okay.
All sports. Only one track and field athlete. Because you know how it works with 100 meters, there's a preliminary round where you don't have to have the qualifying time. Mm-hmm. And so in 2012, we had a male athlete, and in 2016, a female athlete. And the female athlete in London ran the 2 fastest races of her life. Wow. And you can't ask more than that. No. She didn't. I mean, she progressed through the preliminary into the first round proper. But you know, she runs the 2 fastest races of her life. You can't ask for more.
No, I think that's pretty awesome. That's very, very cool. No, I was quite impressed with your Togo shirt and everything in Rio. You know.
Yeah.
And also 2012. You know, that was a pretty big deal. You know. I've never been asked to be a liaison for a country. You know, I would love to do that, but you know.
Oh, it's the best job going.
Maybe someday, you know, when I am considered, you know, a thoughtful, you know, commentator on the sport, we'll have to see. I saw the little note today from our friend Hugh Brasier about London.
Yeah.
You want to tell our readers about that?
Well, London Marathon has issued a statement to everyone, including the mass participants who have been accepted, to say on or before the 7th of August, which is about 2 weeks away, we will give you a definite answer on what is happening.
Okay.
Now, I think there is very little chance of the race taking place, simply because I cannot see how you can have that number of people running in a socially distanced way. Now, at the weekend, we had a cricket game with 1,000 spectators in a 20,000 stadium, 20,000 capacity stadium. This is the first time, and this was an experiment. But, you know, if you can only get 1,000 in safely, I just can't see how you can arrange the masses starting. And indeed, what about spectators? Because if you have got, you know, 50,000 runners, you're going to have 100,000 family minimum wanting to watch them. So I just cannot see it taking place. And I just doubt whether they will think it's worth doing it as an elite-only race, which would be feasible.
Yeah. I'm curious about how that's going to be approached, and with all the other Diamond League or Wanda World Marathon Majors having been canceled now, except only Tokyo earlier in the year. and what was it? And then in terms of non-Wanda races, the LA Marathon, March 8th, got off in California, and they're planning, and gosh, I just read their release on if our races happen, if they don't, here's the info, here's how we're going to do refunds. The whole pandemic has very much complicated the race calendar scenario.
Well, let me just give you an example.
Okay.
As of last Saturday, you could go on vacation to Spain and come back again. As of Sunday, if you go on vacation to Spain, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks when you come back.
Wow.
And if you are caught not quarantining and they're doing checks, it's a fine of about $1,300.
Wow.
So suddenly, I mean, the whole bottom has fallen out of the vacation market.
Yeah.
18 million Brits usually go to Spain on vacation.
Wow.
And people who are there are caught having to quarantine. People who are going to go now are thinking seriously, well, is it worth it? So you see, that can happen so suddenly.
Yeah.
And this can happen for athletes traveling around Europe. You suddenly find yourself in a country which will not let you leave, or will not let you in, or will force you to quarantine. I mean, you want to come and run one race in England, and you have to spend 2 weeks quarantining. It's clearly, I mean, it's a nonsense. So I think this is what organizers of meets are up against.
Well, in California, our governor Newsom is rather careful, and people are annoyed with him. But he just put 22 counties on Friday on lockdown again. And what that means is you can have outside restaurant experiences. Some retail is open, but no nail salons, no haircuts, no athletic training. It's gotten very, and you're supposed not to have people on beaches. Now, it was really interesting because Friday night we drove down along the coast, and on one beach we saw 7 fires. But what was interesting was they were all like 30 feet apart from each other. So, they were doing some social distancing, and I still have a problem understanding the whole beaches. Understanding out here, the beaches are rather craggy, and you really have to want to get out to them. But on none of the beaches over the last couple of months have we seen an insane crowd. We've seen, a good number of people, but nothing, out of the ordinary. The road races over here are all virtual races. There's been a few where there's been actual competition, mostly for elite,
Well, we're not doing the park run, so if you can't do a park run, I can't see how you can do a London Marathon.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And last week the Hamburg Marathon, the one that had been saying they were going to have an event on the 14th of September, now moved to next year, 2021.
Yeah.
And so I don't think you're going to see a major marathon really until 2021. You may see some small things. You may see some rather unique, isolated things. But I just, I thought New York would hold out and happen just because they've got some juggling they can do. But they decided no, and so it'll be interesting to see kind of how they approach it. We're getting a few track meets. What do we have? Michael Norman at 986. And I got a kick out of it that Noah Lyles and his brother Josephus both ran well. Noah went 1994, his seasonal best, and Josephus went 2024, his personal best in the same 200. And then Shaunae Miller-Uibo, boy, she really cut it up.
What is she doing? What is she doing?
She's amazing. 10:98 and 21:98, within a day. And that's
but I mean, but for somebody whose best distance is the 400 meters, what is she doing running under 11 seconds for the 100? It shouldn't be allowed.
I know. It's like Usain Bolt. She's got that amazing height. And, it was funny after having watched Usain so long and seeing how he got out. And I recall a conversation with her coach, Lance Brauman. And he was really tickled when she was running 11.6.
Yeah.
So 11.06. So it's just, it's a big, big change. And then,
I mean, to put that in context, my country has a decent tradition of track running.
Yeah.
Dina Asher-Smith is the only British woman who has ever run under 11 seconds.
Yeah.
And Shaunae had done it in her spare time while doing other stuff. I mean, what just an amazing talent.
Well, she's also done the high jump shot.
Yes.
And long jump. And
yes.
I've been trying to get Lance to tell me when her coach, when she's going to do a multi-event, because she's married to Michael Uibo, who was silver medalist. And
I have asked her the question.
Yeah.
And she said she would like to do it, but the problem is it really has to be in a year when nothing else is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So
she's got a year right now,
Well, yeah, but except you got to find the event, and she's got to be able to train. But I mean, the 2021, we got Olympics. 2022, we've got a World Championship. 2023, perhaps.
Yeah.
Hey, why don't we start a campaign, Larry?
Okay.
The Shaunae must do the heptathlon in 2023.
Okay, I think that's a good one. I think that in the U.S. joining the Commonwealth would be just, brilliant, So Ben Jipcho passed away this weekend.
Yeah.
And, he was in 1970, he was silver medalist in the Commonwealth in the steeple. And in 74, he won gold in the steeple, gold in the 5, and a bronze in the 1500. 72 Olympics, he was silver in the steeple again. But his claim to fame really was his going out in 56 seconds in that first 400 in Mexico City and giving Kip Keino a chance to get away from Jim Ryan. And he sacrificed himself for his country. There was a moving tribute in the Kenyan Standard, a Nairobi paper, where Kip Keino said that without Ben Jipcho, he would not have been as good an athlete. And pretty much giving him credit for figuring it out, what he needed to do to help Kip Keino take the gold. Because at that Olympics, remember, that was the first time Kenyan picked up. They had Amos Biwott in the steeple. They had the 10,000. They got a relay medal, and then they got the gold in the 1500. So it was pretty impressive championship for them. And they've owned the steeple pretty much ever since.
Yes.
So, but he was 77, and they said that what I remember him from too, though, is from the short-lived professional sport, professional track circuit. And he ran there for 2 years. And I recall him doing a double where he ran like a 3:56 mile and an 8:27 2-mile. And I remember watching that on American TV, and it was pretty impressive. George Young was there. Jerry Lindgren ran on the pro circuit. They tried to get Prefontaine, but I think they were going to offer him $500,000. They just didn't have the money. But I think Ben Jipcho is a great role model. I suggest our viewers go find the Mexico Olympic film from the 1500, and what I love is seeing Ben Jipcho in Kip Keino after the race with Keino's arm around Jipcho and just talking, and they didn't know how much they changed so many people's lives.
Well, of course, what people never know is the impact doing something will have on future generations.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could say the way that Kenya now dominates the middle distance running probably was inspired by Kip Keino and a few other pioneers.
Yeah. Yes. No, it's fascinating to me.
And I mean, you look at the fields in some of the diamond leagues, and you have a 15 or a 5,000 or a 3,000, and half the field is East African.
Yeah.
And we talk about the brutality and difficulty of the U.S. trials. If you're a middle distance runner, the Kenyan trials are pretty brutal too.
Yes, they are. I will give that to you, and I think it's amazing. Speaking of U.S. trials, for the first time in 100 and I believe 35 years, there will not be a U.S. track and field championships. And people are wondering over here what our dear friends at USA Track and Field are doing with that $40 million a year they got from Nike, because they're sure not helping athletes with it. So I'm just curious. I would love to have Max Siegel or a spokesperson speak with us and just explain what the plan behind this year is. They've put on a few meets now. We've got a few meets on Runner Space TV, but I think they could have done better.
Yeah, well, we are having our national championships, but it's behind closed doors with no spectators, and it remains to be seen how many of the top athletes will do it. The fact that they're doing it in September, early September, is interesting. Perhaps I would have thought that would be, if people do it, it's likely to be the last meet of the year, because I think a lot of people are thinking, look, we had a late finish last year, and this has been an odd season, so let's just finish, rest, start winter training early, and be ready for next year.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought people would do. Let's go back to the controversy over Tokyo Olympics. I'm still hearing that very big possibility that it's not happening. Our Canadian friend, Mr. Dick Pound, who negotiated the Montreal TV contract, I believe, and who has never missed a chance to be in front of a microphone talking about the Olympics, says that not only is Tokyo in danger, but so is Beijing, the Winter Olympics, the next year.
Well, I mean, I'm accredited for the Olympics, and I'm this week getting emails from Tokyo asking me to confirm that I still want to go, and of course they have to go on business as usual. Surveys of people who live in Tokyo are coming out at the moment, 75% thinking it won't happen.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too, and that concerns me. I just wonder what we can do, what can be done about it, and I'm just not sure anything can be. I think the pandemic's got to take its course. There's positive things about the vaccines.
Yeah,
really positive.
Yeah,
one in your neck of the woods they're working on at Oxford.
Indeed, yes.
And so I have to say again, I'm glad you're in Oxford, the intellectual and capital of the world. So,
but then, it's great what progress seems to be being made, but it's one thing to have devised a vaccine and having tested. you've got to get, I don't know how many billion copies of it, and people vaccinated. I mean, I know that our government has ordered 100 million sets, which is a lot more than the population of the country. So I think there's a feeling that it may not be a once-for-all vaccine, that it will last for a period.
That's what they're saying. The couple things that they've noted is that they were saying that the antibodies from someone who's had COVID, for about 70% of the people only stay in their bodies 17 months. And so it's going to be a challenge. I mean, this is something that we have not come up across before.
No.
And it's challenging our social structure, our civil structure. You know,
no, but also, you know, the received wisdom is that if you get, you know, that if you're young and healthy, you're not going to get the virus and so on. But I mean, I was reading an article by a good club level marathon runner who 10 weeks after he recovered from the virus was able to run 2 miles, and very triumphantly had finally managed to run that far because of what the virus had done to his lungs. And I don't want to name the name, but I spoke to an elite runner who told me that he was very afraid because he said, you know, I'm young and healthy. I don't think it'll kill me. But if it takes away 5 or 10% of my lung capacity, that's the end of me as an elite runner.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the end of my living.
That's a scary thing. And speaking of living, Paul Doyle, an agent over here, mentioned that many U.S. athletes' contracts are up this year.
Yeah.
And some are up last year, and this is kind of their add-on year. And I think that the footwear companies should be lauded for supporting athletes this year. I found it weird that American sprinters had to go down to a meet in Florida and run 5 or 6 events. And I didn't get that until, you know, I thought about it. I said, oh, they've got to run at least 10 events during the year and in order to continue being sponsored. So they've got to have those results. And but what's most unfortunate was they could have taken those 10 events and broken up into 4 meets, and we could have had some performances around the country. But no one thinks that far, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, what do you make of the performances? I mean, there certainly have been some stellar performances, given that we're led to believe that most athletes have not been able to train fully. Haven't had the competitive.
Yeah, you've got to play like, I think Michael Norman's down at USC with Quincy Watts and a few of the other coaches. So they're probably getting more one-on-one training than they've had in a while.
Kendall Ellis is in that group, and I've spoken to her, and she said I perhaps shouldn't say this in front of the millions who listen to us, but they had found a way of sneaking onto the track when nobody was looking at times.
Oh yeah. Oh no. It happens because it's silly. I remember pre-pandemic, elite athletes in California being kicked off high school tracks because they weren't going to the school there, you know, which I thought was silliness, but it's just part of the situation.
I was going to say what Kendall. I mean, that's a group of 4, I believe. It's Kendall Ellis, Candace Hill, Norman, and Ray Benjamin.
Yeah.
And the dynamics, I'm told, among the group is great. And in fact, Kendall told me that if she's having a difficult session and struggling a bit, Michael has a habit of just going up and whispering in her ear, Tokyo Olympics, as the motivation.
Oh yeah, that's that. Well, it's motivation comes in different ways. Lance Brahman's got just about, I believe, 12 athletes down in Claremont, and Noah Lyles, Josephus, Shelley-Ann, or not Shelley-Ann, Shaunae Miller, and some really top. Yes, top. And was it Mitchell Hudson Smith was down there?
Yeah.
And and Jasmine, his only long jumper this year. But so he's able to take a lot of one-on-one time with the athletes.
Yeah.
And I know that's happening in other parts of the country too. I would hate to see a distance runner having to go out and doing all the stuff on their own, but that's what they're doing, and that gives them a little more strength. The German young woman Alina Ray just ran 15:25 last weekend in a meet in Germany, for 5,000. So athletes are coming around, but I think it's also because this year is giving people the time to get healthy again. And what we're seeing is not really racing fit. We're seeing people who are amazingly strong, and also after having taken 2 months off, which many of them did. And that was probably good, took care of a lot of what was ailing them. You've got athletes doing some, Shelby Houlihan, that 14:23, now she's talking about 14:11, and Carissa Schweitzer, 14:26. Amazing to me. What's interesting in going on those lists, though, is seeing how many athletes above them and who did that years ago have also been popped for stuff too, and that's it takes a long time to do stuff in a healthy manner, and this year's kind of giving athletes a chance to do that.
But I think that's a good point, because a piece that I just sent to you today on Jake Whiteman, he says that he has been able to train differently this year because he's not preparing for races. So he's been working specifically on his top end speed because he had analyzed with his coach that if he is going, he was 5th in Doha in the 1500 by 0.4 of a second off the medals. But he was basically saying, if I'm going to live with the top people in the world, I have simply got to be able to run faster in the crucial finishing bit. So therefore, he said, normally, I'm training, resting, running a meet. Now there aren't any meets, so I can actually just train and identify things and really put the time in to say, look, what can I do just to improve my basic speed?
That makes a ton of sense. I think it also, when you're focusing there and you're not being driven all kinds of places, I think it allows you to put a little bit back in the tank. And I'm really excited to see what we're going to see next year.
Yeah.
And see how athletes perform. No, we've had some amazing stuff. I really like Mo Ahmed, the Canadian runner who, ran a 12:47 for the 5,000, just ran a 3:34.8 for the 1,500, the world leader. He is a lot of fun to interview. He was so excited medaling in Doha last year. And he ran that 12:47 then of such a fast 1,500. This guy's going to be ready to roll. Jerry Schumacher has taken his Bowerman Track Club athletes, and Pete Julian's taken his athletes under, I don't know what you're going to call Pete's new club. And then you've got a few other coaches, Oregon Track Club, who's at Mark Rowland up there, one of my favorites, and it's interesting to see how the coaches meld with the athlete, how the athlete melds with the coaches. It's art and science. You've got to have the technical background, but also you have to know how to deal with people. And some of these coaches are tremendous. There's one you probably did not hear about, and we've always said that the majority of coaches are fantastic. We're having a story over here about a coach who was an assistant at several places, and now it made it to the biggest paper in the country, USA Today. Now the coach is being accused of sexual harassment and abuse, and I just think that's sad. I tell parents to learn about their coaches, interview their coaches, but also know that the majority of coaches and officials are tremendous people, and that many states and many organizations require the coaches to have a criminal check. We used to pay for that in California when I was doing Cal Track and Running News magazine, because we thought that was important, and it's just, I don't want to belabor the point, but I just think that,
there's sadly some stories coming out in the UK, not from our sport, fortunately, but from gymnastics.
Okay, yes.
About a lot of abuse, not particularly sexual, but just emotional abuse and very aggressive coaching of very young girls. And, that's got a lot of publicity. And I mean, obviously the US gymnastics had an absolutely disastrous time. And I think in a way that had just given other people the confidence to speak out a bit.
No, I think you're right. We have a sports safety council over here too, and coaches are accredited, and a couple of coaches got pulled off that recently, and that made the news. And I think those organizations need to be there. We've had a few more whereabouts issues in Kenya. Elijah Manangoi, the 2017 1,500 meter champion. And then I read a curious article the other day that it's not corruption in Kenya, it's ineptitude. And just saying that people are spending too much time on their cell phones and, listening to music and forgetting what time it is or forgetting where they have to be, what kind of responsibilities they have. I buy it a little bit. And I do think that Kenyans see the world much different than we do.
Yeah.
And I like that about that nation.
Well, I mean, there was a couple of years ago the Aspel Kiprop situation where he has always maintained his innocence and continues to do so.
Ironically, I was at a socially distanced home brew sampling party on Friday with some track friends. And one of them's question to me was that he'd always thought Asbel was clean. What do I think? And I really liked Asbel Kiprop, and I've seen him compete in all of his things. He came across to me as a person of some honesty, but I knew a lot of his competitors believed he was dirtier than heck, and I also think that in some countries, the level of corruption is something that we in the U.S. and UK have no appreciation of. An IOC or an IAAF friend from years ago reminded me that when they used to go to Morocco in the 90s, a helicopter would take some of the athletes up to a higher altitude so they couldn't get to them for a few days. And they've really cleaned up doping in Morocco and in many other countries. And I think right now with Kenya, we're in a place where it's both ineptitude and corruption. In 2015, there was a auction on eBay for about 70 sets of Nike Kenyan running kit, shoes, clothing, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember talking to some friends in the business who told me that that was pretty normal and that many companies had stopped sending their product to the East African countries and would give it at the championships because they wanted their athletes to get stuff, you know, and they didn't want someone to steal it from them. And I know that one of our writers, we pay through an app now because sending it to a bank wasn't always safe. And it's different in different countries. And that's one of the things that we become aware of with our travels, with our meeting people. You kind of figure out how lucky you are, you know. You know, not every place has a Starbucks every 2 blocks or a Costa coffee, you know, Costa coffee. So, but I tell you, I sure do miss the Queen's Olympic Anniversary Stadium and you know, 8 or 9 days of a World Championship. You get spoiled because London was magnificent. And I used to sit up in the very top row in the stadium, and I was and I would work late till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then my brother would text me, and we'd go get some curry down on Brickhouse Street. And it got to the point where we would show up there at 3 a.m. and the owner would have a Cobra beer out for us and say, "You guys are a little late, you know," and we'd apologize and have our curry and head back. But I wish that if we could have World Championships in London every 2 years and Olympics in Athens every 4, I'd be the happiest person in the world. I loved Athens. It was my first trip with my son, and his Greek was so good and his understanding of German that he negotiated a date between a German decathlete and a Greek woman, and he was so proud of himself that he was able to do that, you know. And he just has a great ear for languages, and we just cracked up. We still crack up about it, but you know, it's some of the beauty of those events. And Stuart, we're going to have to wait till probably 2021 or 2022. You know,
indeed.
And my friend, I've got us down to our last 30 seconds, and I want to thank you again.
Okay,
you stay safe, and this is Athletics Chat number 11, and we have Stuart Wire in Oxford, England, the intellectual capital of the world, and Larry Eder in San Jose, California, the tech capital of the world. And thanks to Mike Deering for producing all of this. And stay safe again, my friend, and we will talk in a week.
Indeed. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Well, hello, sports fans. Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. This is Athletics Chat number 11, and this is the Epilogue. It's where I try to tell you, using my hands, you know, the Lair Bear move. Trying to inform you of what Stuart in Oxford, England, the intellectual capital of the world, and myself, Larry Eder, in San Jose, California, the tech capital as well as Speed City, we're talking about today. And we had many topics. We started out with Stuart was the press liaison for the nation of Togo in the London 2012 Olympics and in the Rio 2016 Olympics. And he has this killer shirt. And it added to his already incredible charm. But he enjoyed it very much. He took care of 6 athletes in 2012 and 5 in 2016. And we got to enjoy Stuart's company in both Olympics, which was pretty exciting. Then we talked about Trayvon Bormel. Trayvon ran a 990 this weekend. This is his first really healthy racing since 2016. Last time I really saw him was in Manchester in 16. It was 16. And got to spend a little time with him there. He was starting to have some Achilles problems there. Made it through the Olympics, and then had one race in 2017. And he's had 2 Achilles surgeries, and he's coming around. Congrats to Mike Norman with his 986 and Noah Lyles, 1994 world leader, and Josephus Lyles, 2024 PB. And then Shaunae Miller-Uibo, oh my gosh, 1098, 2198. She's amazing. I think her best 400 this season is 50.02, but I'll have to check on that. Shelby Houlihan's 1423 and Carissa Schweitz's 1426. Pretty damn impressive. And then our friend Mohamed, go Badgers. He ran 12:47.20. And then a 3:34.8, 1500. So got some wheels. Next time he gets into those last couple laps, he's going to be fascinating. But he's a great guy. And I got to interview him in Doha last year, which was a kick. He was so excited. It's really fun to see how excited some of these athletes get after a great event, and you're always really happy for them. We also talked about the pandemic. We're not going anywhere for a while. We don't think the Olympics will happen in 21. I'm not sure the Winter Olympics will happen in 2022. I think we've got a good year and a half of this ahead of us. So please stay safe, isolate, and wear a mask. Wearing a mask is nothing about your masculinity or femininity or taking away from your rights. You're not turning your country into a communist state. Get over it. This is about thinking about your fellow man or woman and taking care of yourself by putting on a mask. You don't spread disease. That's all it is. Would you have argued about it during the plague? Come on, get over it. Because we're in a plague. The pandemic is a plague. This is nothing made up. Mother Nature is trying to remind us that you need to listen to her once in a while. And that's what's happening. But boy, the whack job's coming out. London Marathon. London Marathon said that August 7th they'll make their final secret double probation response. I feel for Hugh Brasier. I think he's got a tough one in front of him because I don't think people will love him no matter what he does. A lot of reasons not to have the event. Some reasons to have the event. Can you do it in London? Not sure. I understood that they had 1,000 people in a 20-person stadium, 20,000 seat stadium for cricket last week. Well, if you can only do 1,000 in a stadium for 20,000, sounds like a lot of the track meets I've been to. So, not sure what they're going to have to change, but it'll be interesting. And I just don't know what will transpire in the next few weeks. I think people are getting tired of staying safe. They want to go out and scream and do other things, but the problem is doing all that increases your chances of COVID. And athletes are terribly afraid of this. So stay safe, isolate, wear a mask, wash your hands for 20 seconds with a good soap, okay? That's how you do it. Like that. Isn't that great? Yeah, just do it. Thank you, Sister Edward Mary. Same place, 64 to 1972, yes. A product of a Catholic parochial school. How special. Bridgeton, Missouri. Stuart was talking about his amazement at how fast people are running, but he also brought up what Jake Whiteman wrote about did in an interview with us today. Jake said that he's able to work on some things this year that he hasn't worked on in the past. He's working on his top end speed, so when he gets to the end of a race, he can accelerate and he can be in the fight. And that's the challenge. Athletes at this level are fine-tuning, honing their skills. And that's the biggest challenge of all. So this is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. I want to thank Stuart Wire again for being in the intellectual capital of the world, Oxford, England. And thank Mike Deering for producing and managing these. And this is Athletics Chat 11. It's July 27th, 2020. And a belated happy birthday to Des Linden. whose birthday it was on Sunday. I have no idea about her age. I don't ask women about their age. That's not something that I want to get in trouble for. Anyway, stay safe, isolate, wash your hands 20 seconds, wear a good cloth mask, okay? Talk to you soon. Peace out.